Hey guys, I'm going to give you a couple tips here on how to use the VAS 911 screwdriver to help you do some valve adjustments on your Porsche 964. What I got here is the number 1 through 3 side of the engine, and I've pulled off the cat already and most of the hardware that's around it. For you guys that are contemplating a valve adjustment, it's going to be a lot easier if you pull off all the exhaust underneath, get rid of the wheel, and make some room for yourself. You'll also see, if I show you up underneath here, I've gotten rid of the engine tin in between the engine there too. Mine was getting a little nasty, so I've got it out to do some painting. And then I want to show you a couple other things you want to do to get started. So another thing you want to do is remove the heater, the vent pipe there, and also I got rid of or took off the cap of one of the distributors here, so I can actually see the top dead center or piston 1 mark there. Also, another thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand where the timing marks are on the engine pulley that's down here. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get some light in there for you. But what you're looking for is to hit top dead center, and you see that mark right there. That's showing me one of the 3 timing marks that's on the pulley. But right below it, and I don't know if the video will show it, but right where I'm pointing to with the screwdriver will show a Z1, and that's top dead center for cylinder 1, which is the one that's right. Cylinder 1 is closest to us on this driver's side here. I took the screws, or the nuts and the washers off of the valve cover. I have drained the oil. Make sure you want to at least drain the oil from the crank itself, which I've got saved underneath here in a bucket. Alright, finally got it loose. So let's see what happens underneath here. Valve cover comes off. Looks pretty good in there. I'm going to leave this down on the floor here. Now we've set this for top dead center for piston 1, so this should be loose right here. Okay guys, I got the engine set to top dead center for piston 1, and the first check on the exhaust valve is just to feel, does it rock at all? Is it loose? Here I'm feeling a kind of a little tick there, a little feeling of motion, where on one of the valves that's engaged, the exhaust valve here is closed, but this one is probably pushed open. What's that, cylinder 3, because they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and then the other side 4, 5, 6. So this one is tight, so the springs and valves are engaged, but here at top dead center both valves are closed, and so you can feel it kind of moving there. It's one way to kind of check to see if you're in the right place, and both the intake and the exhaust just move a tiny bit. So we're going to check the clearances on the exhaust for number 1. So this is the feeler gauge tool. This one's a tiny bit beat up, but it's going to work. And this is one of the harder parts about doing a valve adjustment on these engines, is getting the feel for, one, to get the feeler gauge in there, and this is of course the easiest, probably the easiest cylinder to reach. The trick is to get the feeler gauge in there and get the feel for what seems right for you, and it's really hard to explain. And this feeler gauge is a little beat up, so it's not perfectly flat, and so I'm not completely thrilled with this one, but there is a flat spot on the end. So I'm going to get it in there, and the trick is to just find the gap and slip it in. In this case, this was just a tiny bit easy, so I consider this valve to be a tiny bit loose. Okay, so I'm going to go through how to set this up with the valve adjusting screwdriver. What did I do? I have a wrench somewhere. Oh yeah. So here's a 12 and a 13 deep box end wrench. I kind of like this wrench a lot, and so I'm going to open up threads on that a little bit. Okay. Now the trick here using the VAS, the screwdriver, I'm just going to call it the screwdriver, is to tighten it down till it's closed. Hold on a second, guys. Bring the nut back here. So I'm just going to, with my fingers, kind of tighten the valve adjuster until it feels like it's closed, which is right about there. Okay. Now you're like, okay, what's with the pins? The point of the pins is that this is 36 degrees, which is 1/10 of 360. So the idea of the way the thread pitch on this screw is, this is a 1 millimeter thread pitch. So one full turn should move the screw a whole millimeter. So 1/10 of a millimeter is where we want to be. So that's why the screwdriver is adjusted this way. So what I do, move this a little bit, kind of the point of the original design here was to create a screwdriver that would just give you a guideline for where 1/10 of a turn is, okay? So with this screw completely closed, this pin is pretty much pointed at that stud right there. So by turning it to where this pin is now pointed at that stud, that's going to be theoretically pretty close to what the correct valve adjustment is, okay? So I'm going to go back in with my feeler gauge and give it a feel, and it's pretty good. To my taste, a tiny bit loose, so I'm going to bring it just a tiny bit tighter and give that a feel. Doesn't take much. And I'm liking that a little bit better, okay? So, with the gauge out, then the secondary use of this thing is to just kind of keep it held in place while you tighten it, because there's a way this screw will move as you tighten it with the wrench. So I just put it on there, and I kind of keep it pointed at the same place as I tighten with the box end wrench. Let me get that. Actually, I loosened this a lot, so what do you want at YouTube? Come on. And again, I've kind of wandered a little bit, so I'm going to check that again. But again, pointing this, that was the word I pretty much agreed on in my own mind was where I wanted to be. So I'm going to just keep it there while I tighten this up. And then I'll give it a final check. With the feeler gauge. Like so. Hey guys, when you're ultimately tightening your valve covers, don't overdo it. You don't need very much at all. Since this is a pretty nice, it's kind of a nice billet cover, it's not distorted, but over tightening can kind of distort it. And some of the cars had funky materials for the valve covers. I'm not sure what it was, but it would warp and distort. But if you've got new seals and decent hardware, you don't need to over tighten it at all. And don't forget, you start from the middle. And I'm just using a small wrench and just working a little bit at a time. So work from the middle and work your way out. You know, this isn't even tight enough to hold a ratchet yet. Real loose. Work your way out from the center, like so, in a pattern. And you can see I'm just barely using wrist pressure here. The ultimate that you want is 7 pounds of torque. Which isn't very much. In fact, I had these last valve covers on for about 5,000 miles, and I'm able to reuse the hardware because none of it's distorted from over torquing. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back from the middle now and work my way out. Just wrist tight. One more time. It's just going to be tight. And I had no leaks from this valve cover after doing this last time. A lot of guys will overdo it, or they talk about these aluminum washers being distorted. And in my humble opinion, I think it's because people are over tightening. Once just to make sure they feel okay.